Okay, so I know this might be a little bit random and potentially very confusing for a lot of you because most of you, I assume, haven't read my book, Vengeance, Children of Faust, nor have you read Origins and Purity. But this video pertains to that, so if you don't care about anything book related, I'd appreciate if you just muted the video and let it play out to the end and left a like to support me. But if you don't want to do that, then feel free to leave and watch a different one of my videos. But this is going to be really non-spoiler for the most part. I'll mention some characters' names, but I won't be mentioning anything really plot related to them. Um, but essentially, I'm trying to figure out right now a lot of stuff. So I'm currently working on Origins Transgression, which is the backstory of the main character of the series, Kim, her parents, Alex, and Rachel. This is their backstory, how they met, obviously how they fell in love, and how Kim came to be. I'm working on that, and I'm more than halfway through the second draft, like the first real draft, and then I have one more process, one more step, and then that can be out and be published. So I'm working on that. I just realized I didn't have Dylan help me shave my sides. I'll have to have him help me do that. Anyway, so I'm working on that. That's getting there. But then I have this other document that I've had sitting in the back burner since like Michigan. I started working on this, and it's called. Well, it's a new name. I changed it, but the original name was The Creation of Sin and the Council. Now, the Council is a group of individuals that are, I mean, they're important figureheads that really don't have a presence in book one except by name and just general reference that you don't really know anything about. Um, but if you want to think about it, they're like the overseers of this world, like kind of like the gods of this world kind of thing, but they don't have a presence in this world for a very specific reason. That kind of drives a lot of the background plot and a lot of like the subplot that you don't entirely follow with the main antagonist, Sin. Um, but essentially, what I'm trying to figure out is I have this document which literally outlines the beginning, the creation of this realm, and also will go into depth, not really too far into depth, but give you a pretty decent outline explaining how this world has overlapping dimensions and thus how those can be abused, which I'm actually pretty proud of that I came up with this because I sometimes I blow myself away with like, oh wow, I actually thought of that. Obvious with like subconscious influences I don't realize I'm drawing inspiration from, but I'm still like I thought of this. So, what I'm trying to figure out is where I can fit this as an individual release and how to make it so the information described in this book that I'm going to be calling, maybe going to be calling Cataclysm, is going to be used in book two. Because I still have to write book two, of course, but book two delves a lot into the council, the consequences of their actions, and obviously the resolution of book one into book two and how new conflict spurs, or rather, new plot lines spur from the end of book one to book two, and how the council is reintroduced and essentially what their goal is. And then we obviously need to learn about the council. We need to understand. The reader has to have an understanding and get an idea, obviously, so they can relate to what's happening, and that way they can kind of like pick their side or whatever have you. And but I need to include a lot of information that deals with the council, with Sin, and with Sin's reasons for creating the Tuffle, which was all very sprinkled out through book one. Explained a little bit, like pieces of it. There was hints and there was stuff like that, enough to drive the plot forward and to give you a background idea of like, there's more to this. So I need to include the content of Cataclysm in a summarized form that doesn't come off as expositive in book two's dialogue and scenes. So when it comes to some characters interacting and understanding the council, who they are when they introduce themselves, what they're doing, and where they came from. It needs to be natural without being over explaining, but also you not to give the reader every single piece of information, every single piece of lore, because then it becomes bloated. I need to pick and choose what's important to include, which is why I'm writing Cataclysm, because I'm going to use it as a reference for Book 2 dialogue when I get there, so I can have all my ducks in order and make it as clean and professional as I can on the first and second go, as opposed to edit, 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 edit. Oh, here's a new idea, edit, 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 and that way Book 2 will never come out. I know it seems like I'm taking forever to get Book 2 out for those who are waiting, but this is all part of the process. This is me really laying the foundation. Book one was laying the foundation for the characters and the general story and the resolution of some characters' arcs while introducing others. And Origins, Transgression, Impurity, and Cataclysm, and any other mini series or sub series that I write, or any other documents that I might spawn, are all to lay the foundation for me to write a canonical, concise, and consistent three unintentional C words book 2 storyline that will have many reference points and will make it a lot easier for me when I do write it to actually make sure I hit every point I need to write, so I don't spend 10 years rewriting. So this is essentially me doing the hard work first before I run into plot snags in the future. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's why book 2 is taking forever, because I can't really start it until I legit wrote book 1 without even giving Sin a real motivation. The antagonist had no actual goal or motivation in my mind. Not really. So I'm trying to. There's a lot of stuff like that in book one that went either unnoticed, uncared, or just unmentioned. That some characters were created just to drive home this one specific thing, and then I wrote myself into a lot of corners, and then I created the character Chrism to fix a lot of problems. But then she made a lot more problems that I'm resolving and that I did resolve, and I made everything come together to make a beautiful story that I'm so proud of and I love so much. But book 2, I'm trying to avoid having all those discrepancies and all of those roadblocks and delays that'll happen in the future, or even potential rewrites in the future. I'm doing the hard work first before I write the story, so I know what story I'm writing. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to figure out how to get Cataclysm to fit as its own release. Now, if I wanted to have it as its own release, which I would definitely have it as its own thing. It would definitely be shorter. It'd probably only be like 25 or 30 pages, maybe 50. It might be like 50 pages total, um, because it'll deal with everything from pre-council, the council, Sin and his plot line, Sin creating the Tuffle, Sin getting Chrism, Sin creating the Tuffle, and then everything. I'm not going to say much else besides that because it would be a spoiler, but then Chrism's further deepen character arcs and storylines, and then everything else. And it'll basically lead all the way up to a big revelation that we already know of in book 1, that we learn of in book 1 with the character Chrism, and then that'll be the end of that, and it'll be like all the original generations of Tuffle, the first Tuffle, and how, and even it would even cover most of the story of a character you don't even know, Melody, who is Minerva in book 1. It'll cover a lot of her origin as well. So her origin story would be split between Cataclysm and the origin story that will follow with Lust. So, I mean, hell, I might even try to include Lust's story in Cataclysm so I don't have to write a whole other origin sub-story. And this will also cover a lot of other Tuffle's stories, like Keldon, Nyx, and like five or six total Tuffle that have their own stories as like the original OG Tuffle. It'll cover their backstories a little bit too, at least in a summarized form. So it's all a lot, and this is why like I'm so tired and depressed and just like lacking a lot of times, because this is all on my mind at all times. I'm always trying. I wish I could just snap my fingers and have the story that's in my head and everything out there just in the form I needed to. Dude, the work is so hard. I wish I didn't have to go to work every day and then I could just literally dedicate the next like 5 years of my life just writing these stories, and then I wouldn't even care about the rest of my life. Like if I had all this stuff done, the rest of my life would just be I would fuck it, just video games all the time, no other hard work. I would just work in video games and work in video games. But the fact that I'm driving home these books makes my life so much more stressful, and I'm not stopping until I'm done. And I need to do these. But it's all going to be summarized. Like the entire story is going to be Vengeance Children of Faust book 1, book 2. I don't think I'm going to do book 3. I'm on the fence of splitting book 2 and book 3 into 2 books, or just keeping it as book 2 and really consolidating everything and making it basically like another book 1, like 400 pages. I think I can do it. It'll be hard. So book 1, book 2, Origins Transgression, Origins Impurity, Cataclysm, and maybe one more Origins to cover Lust in Lucy's story. I've debated on doing an origin story for Kari, for Tansu's mom, but it's not quite as important. That is all summarized in book 1, and that's as far as that really needs to go. There's not a lot of other context that needs to be driven into that. So it's really the only things I need to write. I need to finish Transgression. As soon as I'm done with that, I can work on book 2. And while I'm working on Transgression, I'm editing right now Cataclysm. Cataclysm is basically, again, already written. I just need to expand, and which is what I'm doing in Transgression. So I'm working on these 2 projects, Transgression, which I just need to finish editing, and then that'll be done, and then expand on Cataclysm, which will be done, and then used as a reference point to write book 2. And then I'm done. That's 5 books. 5 or 6, maybe 6. Who knows? But all you'll really need to have is book 1 and 2. Everything else is optional. Origins, and Cataclysm are all entirely optional, just basically lore based. But I want to establish the lore first before I write book 2. So that's what's going on, everyone. In case you were wondering, if you're a reader, if you're a potential reader of mine and you're curious about it, that's what's going on, and that's what's going on in my head. And this is why it takes so long, because I am the only one doing it. So this is why it's hard for me to be like, oh, there's a spelling error, or there's something like that. There's just so many things that can go wrong with so many different characters. I have so many characters too. Not all of them are obviously crazy fleshed out, because I also still need to figure out what to do with a handful of characters in book 2. Like, how do I even justify them being there? But I really don't have to, given the context of book 2. Anyway, it's so friggin' much. But I cannot wait for book 2 to be done, because I love the story of book 2. I love the story of book 1 the most. Book 1 is always my gem. But I'm really happy with the way some of these stories are really turning out. So, and I want you guys to know all the small stories. I want you guys to know where Minerva came from, because that's not explained. That's just kind of something you have to mainly just accept. So my phone's full of notes. I have papers full of notes. My PC's full of notes. I do not want to die before I finish these. So thank you guys for watching. If you made it to the end, boobs. Leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.